Hey team. So I have been on a ton of podcasts lately discussing which supplements women should consider taking. And I was even recently quoted in Stanford Lifestyle Medicine's newsletter on supplements for women over 40. Go check it out. It's linked in the Substack today. And while I truly do not believe anyone needs to take a supplement, they should be add ons after your diet is dialed in. A recent supplement is making the headlines, and I want to talk about it: creatine. This is an interesting one, especially for women, and here's first, what is creatine? Creatine is actually an amino acid compound. It's made of three amino acids: arginine, glycine, and methionine. Your body actually naturally produces creatine in your liver, in your kidneys, and in your pancreas, and it's primarily stored in your muscles, where it helps produce energy mostly during super high intensity and short duration activities. Creatine actually works by replenishing another molecule called phosphocreatine, which is going to be the primary energy source for these short bursts of intense activity. These are like very short sprints or really heavy lifts. And when your muscles use up energy, they break down ATP, which is the energy currency in our system, into ADP. So ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Once that little phosphate is broken off, it goes to ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which is a slightly lower energy form. Phosphocreatine then very quickly donates that phosphate group back to ADP, making it ATP and much more energetically available. This allows your muscles to keep working at a high intensity for a very small period of time. So it's not going to last for a long time, but it really can be helpful in allowing you to increase a weight or do one more rep or work a little bit more intensely during that short duration. So, what are the benefits of creatine for women? Now, if you're like me, you remember that creatine was sort of the bro supplement of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, right? But we are now recognizing in the literature that women naturally have less creatine in their bodies than men, with women actually exhibiting about 70 to 80% lower endogenous creatine stores compared to men. And we also know that creatine concentrations decline with age, which impact things like muscle mass, strength, and cognitive functions. And I talk about this all the time and how important it is to maintain skeletal muscle, particularly for women as we get older. So that's where a creatine supplement can make a really big difference by helping to restore and maintain those healthy creatine levels, especially as we get older. So by supplementing creatine, you increase those phosphocreatine stores, which allows your body to make up more ATP during those short bursts of effort. By enhancing that ATP regeneration, creatine allows women specifically to push themselves a little bit harder during exercise, which promotes more robust muscle mass, bone strength, and other tissue regeneration, which we know decline with age. Now, it's important to know that creatine specifically has having an effect on the muscle here. What we don't see is creatine having a direct effect on bone health by itself. But likely there will be a subsequent effect on bone if you're able to lift heavier weights overall. And we're also learning that creatine's benefits extend beyond just muscle to a really important organ, also known as your brain. Your brain actually uses a significant amount of energy for mental tasks, to keep you upright during the day, to help your body recover at night. And it also relies on creatine as an early energy source. And because the brain's energy demand is very high, especially during periods of significant effort like concentration or memory tasks, or just maintaining that brain tissue as you age, we're recognizing that creatine can be really helpful here. So, similar to muscles, the brain is going to rely on ATP for energy. And when those ATP levels drop, cognitive performance can also decline. And creatine is going to help by boosting those brain's phosphocreatine stores, providing quick mental energy for when you need it most. In fact, some studies have shown that creatine can improve brain function in tasks that require both short term memory as well as reasoning, making it a pretty useful supplement for mental performance. There's even some very early emerging data that shows that creatine can even be helpful after traumatic brain injuries. And one pretty cool recent study showed that a very large dose of creatine after a night of sleep deprivation actually improved cognitive performance the next day. So there's definitely something going on there, even if the science is fairly early. So you know me, you know that I love to bust some myths. So let's bust some myths about creatine. Myth number one, we just went over it. Muscle is the only organ that uses creatine. Absolutely false. Many people think that creatine is only for muscle building. And while it is true that creatine plays a role in muscle function, strength, and recovery, it's definitely not limited to muscle tissue. Your brain uses a significant amount of creatine for energy all over the body. And in order to make sure that you are able to perform cognitively. In fact, creatine supplement has been shown to support cognitive function overall, including memory and focus, which is why it's beneficial for both physical and mental performance. And if you are a woman of a certain age, you know that you want to make sure that you have those physical enhancements, that you're lifting heavy, that you're able to get through the day without feeling fatigued, but also I don't know about you, but I am feeling a lot of that brain fog that comes with this, mid-40s age range. And I have to say, I take creatine and it's been really, really helpful for that cognitive performance throughout the day. Myth number two. This one's really important. Creatine is going to make women's muscles bulky. Now, you know me, and you know that I believe that strength is one of the most important things, and strength often comes with size. So, this one for me is kind of like a bit of an eye roll, but you probably, as we talked about in the very beginning, equate creatine with those gym bros that are benching a bajillion pounds to get huge. But creatine actually won't make a woman's muscles really bulky unless that's what you're training for in the gym. It's actually a training effect that's going to happen with. But it will help support muscle growth and strength without leading to that excessive muscle size. It's a great option for women looking to enhance performance and build muscle at a healthy and sustainable rate. So, whether you're an athlete, a weekend warrior, or someone just looking to stay healthy and active, creatine can really benefit any woman looking to improve strength, recovery, and overall performance. All right, myth number three, creatine causes bloating. Now, one of the most common misconceptions about creatine is that it's going to cause bloating and cause bloating in everyone. The reason oftentimes that people start to feel bloated when they first start to take creatine is due to the way that it draws water into the muscles and sometimes in the gut. So osmosis works, right? Creatine does help to store more water in muscle tissue, which can lead to that temporary water weight gain. So, oftentimes in the first week or two, if you weigh yourself regularly, you'll see that the scale will go up a pound or two. That's not muscle, that's not fat, it's just your body hanging on to water. This is referred to as water retention, and it's completely normal. However, it's important to note that, again, this is not fat gain. The water will tend to stabilize after the initial few weeks of supplementation. Now, this leads me into the next myth, which is that creatine monohydrate is the only effective form. So, for some people, creatine monohydrate might actually give them a little bit of GI distress, that GI bloating, but there are other options. Creatine monohydrate is often considered the gold standard, but creatine hydrochloride is actually a newly marketed form that's gaining popularity. Creatine hydrochloride is marketed as being more easily absorbed and causes a little bit of that less GI bloating. It depends person to person. Um, However, while it may have some benefits, the early research actually shows that creatine hydrochloride and creatine monohydrate both deliver sort of comparable performance gains. So I would say choose the one that makes you feel the best. The key takeaway is that both forms can be effective, but creatine monohydrate is still the most studied. There's not nearly as much data on creatine hydrochloride. And I think this is really important is that creatine monohydrate is typically the most affordable option. So the hydrochloride might cost you a little bit. I get this one a lot on the podcast is myth number 5, creatine powder is better than creatine gummies or vice versa. Creatine is creatine and is creatine. So as long as you get it into your system, it's going to do its job. So when it comes to creatine, actually dose matters more than format. For effectiveness, the recommended dose of creatine monohydrate is typically 5 grams per day, give or take, whether in powder or gummy form. So you're as long as you get the 5 grams, you're going to get the most effective result in your body. And the great part is that you can take it anytime during the day as long as you're consistent. So you don't need to time it around a workout. However, buyer beware. A very recent investigation on creatine gummies found that some brands contain less creatine than promised. This could likely limit the effectiveness. And the reason that this is probably happening is actually a flaw of gummies kind of across the spectrum of supplements. In order to make a gummy, you actually have to heat a lot of the ingredients so that it creates that sticky gummy form. And sometimes if you do that inappropriately, you actually change the molecular structure of the ingredient that you're including. And so creatine, in many of the brands that they were looking at, they actually found creatinine, which 2 different molecules. You will get creatinine excreted from your body. If you've ever gotten a urine test or a blood test, they will look at creatinine. That's not creatine. It is a downstream product that is being excreted in your system. So do your homework. Gummies are great. They're convenient, but it's essential to ensure that you're getting the full 5-gram dose. I also get a lot of questions about the sugar in gummies. I mean, if you're exercising, there's very, very, very minimal sugar in these gummies. The added sugar content is probably not a major concern for most people, especially if you're moving your body. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. If you're feeling like the powder doesn't work for you or it's really hard to incorporate into your diet, the gummies were great. A couple of grams of sugar if you're exercising is no big deal. So what's the bottom line on creatine for women? As I said earlier, I don't believe anyone needs to take supplements. So if you're hearing out there that this is a must-have in your supplement stack, I would say, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? But I will say that creatine is safe, it's effective, and it's probably underutilized for women, especially women that are trying to support their muscle health. I'll be completely honest, I take it daily. I'm giving you a discount code for a company that I just really believe in, Create Creatine Gummies. They have an amazing scientific advisory board, and I just really trust the product. So whether you're looking to improve strength, cognitive function, or even in some cases, sleep quality, I actually believe that the data show that creatine can help. Without sounding like a total salesperson, if you want to try creatine at a discount, go into the Substack. There is a link there for Create Gummies. Again, I don't push brands that I don't really believe in, and I just think they're doing a good job. So go ahead and check it out and try some creatine and let me know how it goes for you.